Welcome to the stream. I hope everybody is having a fantastic time unit, whatever that time unit mayhaps be. Phew. There we go, we can see more of my face now. Okay, time for some clickety-clacks. I shall be with you momentarily, chat. All right, clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Yes. Oh, and then... Yes. Oh, and then... Ah, this is me making noise. Yes. Oh, and then... Ah, hold on a second. We're having the same problem as yesterday. Ah, hold on a second. We're having the same problem as yesterday. We are. This is a massive amount of feedback. Wherefore you come from as yesterday. We are. This is a massive amount of feedback. You can hear it when I talk. There's a massive amount of feedback coming through. Don't know why though. Let's put that at less volume. What do we want? Testing, testing, testing. It's a bit more abrupt. All right, all right. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Push the magic button. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. I seriously don't know where this is coming from. Let's go with filters. Let's try that. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Let's try that. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Let's try that. Okay, I think that's a bit better. Good morning, Kandaria. Hope you're doing well. Okay. I think that is it. Indeed, Kandaria, indeed. Oh. Why this changes colors every day, I have no idea. I suppose, why keep things normal? Good morning, Lord Volpix. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so today... Yes. Okay, so doing blue today. Good morning, Yamashisha. Not a problem. Good morning, Samantha. Hope you're doing well. Welcome, welcome. Really bored? Shadow, welcome, welcome. Fair enough. Yeah, same squirrel time, same squirrel place. Same squirrel chat. Okay, so today's 16,000 words. Then we'll be caught, well, not quite caught up. We'll be in a much better position than we were yesterday. Then tomorrow we can focus on that. Then Wednesday, focus on that. Thursday is the nature of predators. Friday is the human from the... By the end of the week, we are in the same place we are. So actually, we're a bit better. And that means on Sunday, you can do Billy Bob. Friday. Sunday will be probably one of those. One of these. Much appreciated, Anthony. Much appreciated. Got a lot of work to catch up. But we should be able to get. I think. Like I said, Monday will be... We'll need to find decently priced stories for these. I like the Osher story from yesterday. I'm always more prone to the humor side of stories. So something like the Osher one or Riptide was nice. But Bacon? Good. Just going through recent stories. But yeah, definitely the more humorous one. Indeed. Wolf Among Us is quite good. Which I might have it take Billy Bob's place. I know it's not a but I think it fits more on the main channel than it does on the secondary channel. Especially since it started off from a TFOS. But as always, you'll just have to check to see the link stuff. Billy Bob is a bit on the extreme of what we can do. But it's a limited series, so it's not too bad. I think we've only got 10 chapters to go. We're finished. Thank you very much, Charisma. Very much appreciated. I'm glad it helps. I really am. I love hearing that my content helps people, whether that be with commutes or sleeping or just getting through your day. Awesome. I think as a society, we underestimate the power of storytelling, especially in the modern age. I try to be entertaining on the live streams. But, unlike most streamers, the work side of this is more important than the streaming side for me. Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Doug. And also, welcome. Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Charisma. Sounds like an awesome future. At worst, an awesome story, and at best, an awesome life. Oh, thank you, Kandaria. And I'll try, Anthony. I think recently, like last month before, was emphasizing the voices too much, which in some ways was distorting them, so making them a bit more difficult to hear. I've been trying to pull back a bit and still use voices, but not nearly as extreme, so that we can still keep the enunciation so that most people understand. I mean, it's all great doing an authentic Scottish accent, but if nobody can understand you, it really doesn't matter how authentic it is. Fair enough, Doug. And then it's also a balancing act with how the voices wear on my voice, that sort of stuff. It's all a learning experience, even though I've been doing this for 6 years. 6 years. That's longer than most YouTubers' careers. Fair enough, Lord Wolpex. That's why I go with the strict Scottish accent rather than the full Scottish accent. Shrek Scottish accent is one of the most popular Scottish accents in the world because people can understand it. Aye, donkey, that'll do. An ogre is like an onion. No, I haven't done a collab with any. I don't really hang out on social media where you would meet people to collab with, so as a detriment to my channel, but I'm not really a big social media person. I'm on Twitter, sure, but that's mostly for advertising the channel and in case something happens to the channel. I think unless you know somebody who knows a bunch of people, starting collabs is a bit of a problem, or getting collabs. Especially with bigger YouTube. Alrighty. I think I'll mosey on into the first story. Right. Everything looks good. 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 Yeah. So, again, like yesterday, we're all over the place today. We're going to be doing 2 The Humans, 1 Billy Bob, 1 Re-T-Foss, and 2 T-Foss. Again, trying to make up for lost time from last week because of migraines and stuff. But yeah, Always fighting against that stupid little organic thing wrapped around my voice. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Slate's... Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Slate's narration, the web series The Human from a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 49. Master General Kyrian Yith, Adventurer Level NA, Half-Breed Drow, Lusanian. The enemy has done nothing more than lob the occasional fireball at us, sir. The enemy has done nothing but lob the occasional fireball at us, sir. General Smartman followed me. They have encamped in the wooded area to the southwest, which hinders our visibility. So we don't know what they're planning, or even the full disposition of it. So we don't know what they're planning, or even the full disposition of their forces, I called. Yes, sir. I do have some good news, though. Out with it. You were right about their caravan, and we were able to successfully ambush. My neck? What about my neck? Oh, yeah, yes. Migraines and stuff. And we were able to successfully ambush. Sorry, going from story to, like, reality, it takes a little while. The answer is no. No, I won't do Death Wielders for a couple of reasons. One, each chapter is the length of a book. So for me to do one chapter, I have to read an entire audiobook's worth of content. I did 15 chapters of it back in the day, many years ago. Number two, I can't monetize it because of the specific license it's under. And three, I would rather punch myself in the face than try and pronounce all those names again. Yes, yeah. That particular organic thing around my voice. The neck. And the head. Caravan. So there's a very specific license that Death Wielders J-Verse is under. Which means that I can't use it for commercial purposes. So I can't run adverts on it. Fourth wave? What about fourth wave? Greetings. Right about their well, it's not licensed. He publishes it under Creative Commons something license. So you're allowed to use the work as long as you don't profit. Greetings, Alpha Noob. Hope you're doing well. Caravan. And just to be clear, some of those chapters are 100,000, 150,000 words. So I would have to dedicate the entirety of my time to narrating it. I think that's possibly why Ren stopped. You were right about their caravan. You were right about the caravan, and we were able to successfully ambush it, he said with a hint of smug smile. Our forces returned today and reported that we managed to capture 18 slaves, and even secured the equipment the orcs were escorting. Excellent. Put the equipment to use and put the slaves with the others. Dismissed. I absent-mindedly waved him towards the door. He bowed and left as I returned my attention to the map. While I was glad that I had successfully predicted the enemy caravan's movements, their lack of action against us here has been concerned. I expected at least one heavy assault before they laid siege. Yet it has been a week since our scouts confirmed their presence, and they haven't tried anything serious yet. Fair enough. Anything serious yet. Are they waiting for reinforcements? That would be foolish. A bird sent by my own reinforcements informed me that they had made contact with a small enemy host and weren't able to completely eliminate it, which means that the enemy knows about my archers. Even with all the forces of the entire unified chiefdoms, they would have difficulty taking this position. And once the archers arrived, I can go on the offensive. Even foreign aid won't arrive before my archers. So what are they planning? Have they decided against an assault? Have they decided against an assault altogether? Our defenses were designed to look ramshackle, but a discerning eye would be able to tell how solid they really are. They would also know they require better equipment to launch a successful assault. But if my ambushes returned today, the ambush had to have happened. But if my ambushes returned today, the ambush had to have happened at least 2 weeks ago. It's unlikely that they're still waiting on their caravan. So what are they waiting for? I stared at the map, trying to glean a clue as to what the enemy is up to. No matter how hard I stared, though, nothing came to mind. I scoffed and turned to my bed. I just fed. I wasn't feeling particularly tired. But it's important to remain on a schedule when you can. But it is important to remain on a schedule when one can. I removed my boots and armor, then slid under my covers. As I lay there, I couldn't help but feel like the orcs were up to something, and I was missing a key piece of information. I tossed and turned, my mind fighting over whether to think or sleep. I tossed and turned, my mind fighting over whether to think or sleep. After what seemed like hours, I finally grew tired and fell into slumber. Well, you tried. A hauntingly familiar voice forced its way into my mind. It was a valiant attempt, but the will of the divine, if nothing. My eyes snapped open and caught a glimpse of the dawn's early light shining through the window. My eyes opened and caught a glimpse of the dawn's early light shining through my curtain before my ears had a chance to register what had awakened me. Once they caught up, I heard screams, crashes, and the clanging of metal striking metal, the sounds of battle taking place nearby. I leapt from the bed and quickly donned my armor, nearly forgetting my boots in the process. Once I was dressed, I grabbed my sword and flung open the door and promptly froze in shock. There were orcs within my barricade, but I had already realized that was the case. There was a hole in my barricade which had allowed the orcs access to my camp. The creation of this hole had to have been extremely violent, judging by the distance in which the logs had been thrown. The reason for my shock, though, was because my mind was trying to figure out how this happened, while my eyes were simultaneously providing the explanation. Orcs and drow were fighting tooth and claw, while mages rode by them in harnesses. Orcs and drow were fighting tooth and claw, while mages rode by them on harnesses, bringing the occasional spell to the horrid effect. My soldiers had been taken by surprise and hadn't yet recovered or formed up. In the middle of all of this was a great and terrible beast. Its red and yellow hide was covered in arrows, and its massive fang-filled mouth was ripping my soldiers apart like they were made of paper. A Nahlim, and it was fighting alongside the orcs. How? Where did they get it? Did they tame it? How? Once the Nahlim finished the emissary... Once the Nahlam finished decimating a group of my soldiers, it rose up to its full height, standing at least twice as high as the tallest orcs. Then the beast roared, a deafening and blood-curdling sound, even from my distance. Its bellow made me wince, and this finally struck me from my stupor. I began to run towards the battle, determined to rally my men and push these bastards back. We would figure out what to do about the Nehillim once we'd killed a few orcs. "Form up!" I shouted, trying to be heard over the clamor of battle. I raised my sword and shouted again. A few of my soldiers heard me and began to form their lines. A mountain mage rode past, narrowly avoiding a swipe from his sword. An arrow narrowly missed his head. That didn't stop him from locking eyes with me. I knew for certain what his target was. I began to ready my blade to try and cut him down, but his staff was already pointed at me. The spell that slipped from his lips formed at the tip of the staff and rushed towards me at blinding speed. Just before it hit me, I realized that this was a wind spear. I sighed at the triviality of the magic being used. And then the spell hit me. I flew backwards and felt a crunch as I was forced through the wall behind me, then another as I continued through the next wall. I slammed into the ground alongside a load of rubble and tried to get up, but flopped back to the ground. My eyes weren't able to focus, and I could no longer breathe. My eyes weren't able to focus, and I could no longer breathe properly. I felt my chest and checked my hand, barely registering that the blood covering it was my own. Then the abyss took me. "We do not have a lot of time," a familiar voice once again rasped in my mind. "You remember our agreement?" I tried to speak, but no air left my mouth. I vaguely recalled our previous conversation and nodded. "Oh, you are smart enough to know that there's nothing further you can do, and the orcs will take your camp. Once they do, it'll not take them long to figure out that you are the commander, and that you are also a half-breed vampire. This will result in a rather unfortunate demise for you." "Then what do you want me to do?" "Flee to the west. Not home? No. After you flee, the orcs will find your sister, and she will tell them all about you. Once the orcs learn of your heritage, they will gleefully inform King Lofen. Your home and family will be destroyed before the end of this week, despite your contingency. If you are with them, you will also be." A slew of emotions played through my mind. At first, I doubted this being's words, but quickly realized those doubts were likely wishful thinking. Even if the orcs didn't manage to capture Esmira alive, there are the slaves that have been converted. With some clever magic, the world that Allergus imbued into them would dissolve, leaving them to their own devices. It would be foolish to believe that they would keep my secrets. The contingencies that I had put in place to prevent Lofen from targeting my family in my absence would also fail once my vampirism became public knowledge. No one would be stupid enough to be caught helping a vampire. Moon and my trusted servants will die. My grief nearly overwhelmed me. Everything that I had built, everything that I have loved, gone. And there's nothing I can do. "You will flee, then," the voice rasped. "You must go west. You will be pursued. But if you keep fleeing to the west, they will eventually give up. You mustn't stop until you're certain that they aren't following." "Where am I going? What awaits me?" "I would like to, but..." I woke, gasping. I instinctively grabbed my chest, feeling a hole in my armor and the cloth beneath it. The bearskin that I felt assured me that the wound had healed. I stood and looked for my sword, but it was nowhere to be found. Swearing under my breath, I looked to the sky to get my bearings. The sun was still rising, but my destination was in the opposite direction. I paused for a moment, gazing at the hole in the wall. Esmira was in there, and I couldn't help but think about killing her. Well, it would be better my mood to... While it would better my mood to feel what meager life she has left leave her body, it would cost me precious time. I decided against it, and began to run. If I'm lucky, King Lofen will find a way to kill her for me. Before I could get far, a Hernas stopped in front of me. Atop the Hernas was an orc spellcaster with a very familiar face. He looked at me with surprise, not expecting me to be standing. His shock caused a moment of hesitation that, when combined with his proximity to me, spelled his doom. Before he could raise his staff, I leapt, landing behind him on the Hernas. I grabbed his skull and pulled his head to the side hard enough to hear a crack, and tore into his throat with my fangs. He began to seize as a sweet, coppery taste filled my mouth. I gulped it down greedily, but I couldn't have my fill. I had to get moving. I threw him from the saddle and grabbed the reins, urging the Hernas to the west. It began to gallop as I heard shouting from behind me. A wind spear flew past my head, taking a small portion of my ear with it. I pressed the Hernas faster and lowered myself to avoid more close calls. The gate had been left open, indicating that a portion of my forces had abandoned their posts and fled. Typical of Lofen's finest. An explosion hit the gate as I cleared it, sending splinters in all directions. A large one took residence in my left arm, but I quickly moved it. The wound began to heal as I continued into the trees as fast as the Hernas could take me. I continued to dodge both foliage and spells for most of the day, and eventually my Hernas tired. It was well trained, though, and it kept going until it finally collapsed. I leapt from its back and continued running, nearly as fast as the Hernas had. Nearly as fast as the Hernas had. A few minutes later, my pursuers' Hernases also tired, and I finally lost them. I kept running until the sun was in front of me, and finally slowed my pace. My heart was pulsing, yes, and my breath was heavy. I wiped sweat from my brow as I continued to walk towards wherever my goal happened to be. As the sun began to set, I found a small cave. After determining that it was empty, I decided to take a rest. I grabbed some nearby branches from the bush. I grabbed some nearby branches from the bush to mask its entrance, then crawled inside after adjusting the camouflage a little. I made myself as comfortable as possible. Then, I was finally left alone with my thoughts. I've lost everything. My family, my friends, my home, my career, and even my dreams. All I have left is my body and the clothes on my back, which have a conspicuous hole in the chest. I felt my anger build up within me, but it was a cold sort of anger. What do people normally do to cope with loss and grief? Cry? Crying wasn't a waste. Crying would waste water, though, and I'm in a survival situation. No, the best way to cope with my grief is to analyze what went wrong and learn from it. Unfortunately, I have no idea how I can learn from whatever mistake it is that I made. A beast of the wastes had laid low my plan for conquest. Did they capture it in the wastes and bring it here? No, that would have taken them far too long. Could they have already had it tamed and ready to fight? If that's the case, why wasn't it used against my forces to begin with? Could it be that they stumbled upon the Nehilim, managed to capture it without killing it, and one of them knew how to tame it? Well, it sounded ridiculous. That hypothesis resonated within me. The separate and unlikely coincidences happening all at once, culminating in my defeat. It is absolutely reeks of divine interference. The question is, which divine? The one claiming to help me, or one of the others? Which of the little bodily... Which of the little bodiless worms had decided to meddle with reality and force my fate? It was a group effort, actually, and I had no hand in it. I was so exhausted. I was so exhausted that I haven't even realized I'd fallen asleep. I glanced around the abyss, trying to locate the god that had spared my life. Why me? I demanded. Why would I be targeted like this? They do not see it as you do. To them, you are nothing. They didn't see a half-breed vampire trying to conquer the Night Kingdom and become king. Instead, they saw the vampires about to make a return to power. Obviously, they decided to prevent that from happening. But why? Their motives are as unknown to me as they are to you. They likely acted upon a whim, it said with a cruel laugh. Yet, this is precisely what I wanted to demonstrate to you. Yet, this is precisely what I wanted to demonstrate to you. As a mortal acting on your own volition, you are powerless against the meddlings of the beings known as gods. If they care enough about your plans to dislike them, your plans will fail, regardless of the thought or effort you put into them. All it took this time was a whisper to a beast and an orc. Like you are whispering to me now. No, I am speaking to you. A whisper is much more subtle. Your hearing suddenly becomes clear enough to make out what someone is saying in a busy marketplace. A sudden craving for a specific dish at a specific restaurant that a certain someone happens to be at. Even something as simple as fatigue can be used to guide you to where you want to be. Can be used against you to where we want you to be. Can be used to guide you to where we want you to be, as you'll recall. And recall I did. I remember the first time I'd heard this big voice. I'd become so tired so quickly that I thought I'd been poisoned. That was a whisper then. As you can infer from our current conversation, we're capable of more direct. If you had managed to somehow disrupt their scheme with Annihilum, one of the other gods may have spoken to an enemy commander and told him about the escape tunnel your orc slaves were digging. If the enemy commander failed, then a lightning storm may have formed and stricken your barricade, causing them to explode. So, why didn't you stop them? I thought you were trying to help me. I knew the answer to this question and felt foolish for asking it, but my anger and indignation forced it out of me. I am helping you in such a way that allows us both to achieve our goal, as we agreed. It should be obvious that I have no interests in your petty ambitions outside of what they can do to achieve my. And that's the point. If you listen to me and do as I bid you, I will help you achieve your goal. You will gain power and purpose, and no being will be able to look down on you again. If you do not, I will leave you at the mercy of the other gods to do with as they please. It is very unlikely that they will be. It is very unlikely they will aid you. I allowed myself to calm once more and thought about my situation. This being is promising to help me gain power, but not help me do anything except gain power. So what's stopping other gods from eliminating once our bargain is completed? They will try, but not because they want you dead. They have another goal, and you will be an obstacle to that goal. However, we can only interfere when we are allowed. There is a greater being at work here that'll make certain the coming contest will be fair. And if you survive, you will be allowed to do as you please. free from the meddling of beings like me. Then what would you have me do? End of chapter. Alrighty, I shall be back in a moment. I give you music and chair. All right, back. And hello, Phoenix Paul. Hope you're doing well. Or as well as can be. Well, if there was no chair, I'd be sitting on the floor. Or more precisely, probably laying on the floor, wishing that my back didn't hurt. Oh, no, that's... Click. Oh, 50. That correct? Yes. Yeah. But before we continue, the most important thing is... Oh, yeah. Boomer juice. I'm glad to hear that your life's doing well, and I hope your friend gets better soon. Alrighty, let's move on to the next chapter. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome. Let's move the microphone to the correct place. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration, the web series The Human from a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 50. Master General Kyrian Yulth, Adventurer Level. Chapter 50. Master General Kyrian Yulth, Adventurer Level NA, Half-Breed Drow, Bulashunian. You will awaken and continue traveling west. The hoarse voice pierced my mind. By midday, you will reach a well-traveled road. Go left and follow. You will meet a traveler who is not what he appears to be. Be wary of the but consume his blood. Take his clothing and dispose of his body and your armor out of view of the road. Continue on the road in the same direction until you see a smaller path. Then follow that path. Expecting riddles and sidespeak, I found myself somewhat stunned by how clear the directions were. Despite my shock, I endeavored to memorize them. Nothing will stop me from finding the power that this being is promising and annihilating whatever challenge awaits me. And what do I do when I reach the end of that path? And what do I do when I reach the end of the path? The path leads to a dungeon. Enter the dungeon and do what you feel is appropriate. And I think the return to riddles and sidespeak stung me even more than its absence. It took more than a few moments for the confusion to leave my expression. You can't tell me more than that. All I can say is that you're a vampire. Do what vampires do. That's all. Why? A being far grander than myself is preventing me from speaking directly of the events that may unfold within the dungeon. It laughed. Fold within the... Why? A being far grander than myself is preventing me from speaking directly of the events that may unfold within the dungeon. It laughed. The very same being that'll ensure fairness, the challenge to come. Go now, find your purpose. I awoke before I could ask any further. Not that I would have gleaned any answers. Do what vampires do. Likely a riddle that'll become easier to solve within the dungeon itself. I arose from my temporary shelter and scanned my immediate environs. Birds were singing in the trees, which indicated that there weren't predators or monsters nearby, and there were no other signs of incursion. It seems that I've truly lost tours. My muscles and bones ached from sleeping on the ground, and the quick stretch resulted in several satisfying pops and cracks. The stretch was able to provide enough relief to continue my journey. The desire to feed hit me as I verified the sun's position in the sky. I'd used a lot of strength yesterday, and I would need to feed on blood again to restore it. Luckily, the entity had told me where to find my next meal. I did my best not to think too hard about what caused me to undertake the quest, but failed miserably. My entire family soon to be dead, my home razed to the ground, my dreams of world domination of all but damaged. Am I touched by a supposed god? I am touched by a supposed god. These thoughts had just wondered to whether or not the contributor. These thoughts had just wondered to whether or not continuing my existence was even worth it when I finally came across the road. It wasn't much of a road. The primary components of its construction were dirt and dust, unlike the roads that lined the countryside of the Night Kingdom. I dutifully turned towards my left and followed the glorified path. It wasn't long before my feet became tender and sore, and I found myself missing the carefully constructed stone roads of my homeland. I followed the road for a few hours before I finally came across my objective. A dwarf wearing a high-collared coat and a large pack stopped and eyed me warily. I stopped as well and regarded him head to toe. His coat and clothing appeared new and expensive, yet his pack and boots appeared well worn. The dwarf was obviously trying to look like a merchant, but there were certain inconsistencies with his disguise. "Who the feck are you?" I can ask you the same, I replied. You have the look of a merchant, but I've never met a merchant who travels alone. Well, that's because you've never met me, he grinned, showing a few missing teeth. The name's Tarks. You? Kyrian. Well, Kyrian, me thinks it's damn lucky day for you. I see you've got a hole in that armor of yours, and I just happen to have something that'll likely fix it. And I just happen to have something that will is likely to fit you just fine. Oh, I asked, moving closer to him. That would be quite the boon, if the price is right. I've got the cheapest bagging stuff you'll find in the middle of the road, he laughed as he pulled the pack from his back. I'm more than willing to get you a deal. He stuck his hand into his pack as I moved closer to him. As he began to remove his hand, I saw the glimmer and instinctively grabbed his wrist. My strength was beginning to wane, but it was more than enough to snap his wrist and send the dagger flying. I wasted no time putting him into his final embrace. The fair, he gasped a bit into his throat. He gasped as I bit into his throat. He tried to resist, but I already had taken a gulp and restored my strength. The warmth of the blood flowed through me, and I took more than my fill. After a few moments, the dwarf fell limp in my arms, completely drained of his vital essence. I let him fall to the ground and studied him. I'd managed to avoid spilling blood on his clothes, but was faced with another problem entirely. Dwarves were significantly shorter than Drow, and his attire would not fit me. My eyes darted towards his pack. On a hunch, I grabbed it and emptied it out. Several items fell to the ground, including another knife, some wrapped rations, about 50 feet of hempen rope, a water skin, several pieces of jewelry, a bulging coin purse, and some rather well-made clothing. It would appear that Tarks was quite a bit more entrepreneurial than a traveling merchant should be. Take his clothes, sir, I chuckled, picking up the clothing. I removed the garments and replaced them, finding them to be a perfect fit. I spent a little time packing the items back into the bag, with the exception of the large knife, and then disposed the Tarks and my former clothing out of sight of the road. Passing carnivals would find him and make sure it didn't go to waste. Slinging the pack onto my back and securing the large knife to my waist, I continued my journey. Not a bad change of fortune. I was now far less conspicuous and even armed. If I changed my mind about my decision, I would be able to survive for quite some time with the wealth that the dwarf had likely killed for. I was still debating this choice when I came across the path. It was overgrown and rather uninviting, and if I hadn't known to look for it, I would have missed it entirely. I stood at the fork in my journey and thought for a moment. Should I continue to whatever city this road leads to and seek my fortune with my own two hands? Or should I accept the would-be god's challenge and seek power? Voices in the distance brought me back to reality. Drow rarely leave the Night Kingdom, and I would have to justify my existence everywhere I went. I would also have to be wary of retribution from the scorned deity. I made my choice then and there, and began to make my way down the untended path. The overgrowth made travel difficult, but before long I found my destination. The small building served as a dungeon's entrance. It appeared to be some type of mausoleum, with two small pillars, with two smooth pillars lining either side of its arched entrance. The roof of the structure rested upon these four columns and depicted a skull being worshipped by reptilian beings. I felt an immense dread enter my body as I took a step forward. Many people equate vampires with the dead, so I should feel at home in a crypt. However, my instinct screamed at me that something terrible lay within here. Taking a deep breath and snarling to myself, I drew my knife and entered the dungeon. One of the advantages to vampirism is the ability to see in almost complete darkness, but my eyes still took a moment to adjust. Once my blindness receded, I continued forward and took in my surroundings. The floors were tiled and the walls were unnaturally smooth. Neither showed any signs of tool marks, seams, or any other variety of imperfection. This indicated that they had been created magically. I recalled from my studies that the term dungeon isn't the most accurate description of places, or they often serve to contain monsters and other threats to civilization. They've also been known to serve as lairs for powerful beings that would seek harm on others. The origins of most dungeons are a complete mystery, and how they came to contain monsters and traps is anyone's guess. My footsteps reverberated through the hall as I continued on. It was a soft, steady melody that was almost soothing, until the sudden click interrupted my pace. Until the sudden click interrupted my pace. The tile beneath my foot had depressed, and I barely reacted in time to catch the spiked grate that sought to impale and crush me. Even my vampiric strength struggled with the weight of the trap. I adjusted my footing and pushed with all of my might. Just as I thought I was done for, the trap eased up and withdrew into the ceiling. I quickly moved forward before it could trigger again, being careful to avoid the tile I'd carelessly tread upon earlier. Before I could catch my breath, a screech announced the presence of several small reptiles. The lizards were roughly the size of my boot, and readied my knife. I readied my knife as they swarmed me, trying to pick off the pieces of my flesh. I readied my knife as they swarmed me, trying to pick off pieces of my flesh with their teeth and claws. I was much faster than they were, and began to exterminate the pests with my knife and free hand. They were easy to crush, and not very resistant to stabbing either. It didn't take that long to finish them, and I watched as the few wounds I had received healing. And I watched as the few wounds I'd received healed. The bites were extraordinarily painful and bled longer than they should have. Once they finally failed, I continued on. I was much more wary this time, trying to avoid any further traps by tapping my forward foot on the upcoming tiles. It slowed my pace, but quickly paid off as I encountered more traps. After each trap, another group of lizards attacked and was defeated. Eventually, I put away my blade and began to use the little bastards as stress toys. This pattern repeated several more times before there was an abrupt charge. "For the Lord!" a dwarf-sized lizard shouted, waving its spear in the air. "For the Lord!" its 5 comrades echoed. I drew my knife again and charged at them. They hadn't expected this, and I managed to slit one's throat before they could recover. I grabbed its spear and flung it deep into the chest of another, then dodged back as the last 4 armed of the formation of assault. Then dodged back as the last 4 formed a formation of assault. I grinned at them, baring my fangs. "Hey, sucker!" one of the reptiles gasped. "Crap, what do we do?" "We poke him till he stops moving, same with everything else." "Oh, the Lord!" They charged forward, and I slid under their They charged forwards, and I slid under their spear tip. I used my claws to tear at the face of one and stabbed my blade into the heart of another. I dragged my knife out of its chest and through the throat of the one I had mauled, disallowing any recovery time. I leapt over its falling corpse and bit into the shoulder of another lizard before it could change the position of its spear, and threw my knife at the final one. I grabbed the reptile's throat and lifted it into the air as its comrades hit the floor with my blade protruding from its space between its eyes. I spit its blood onto the floor and ripped the spear from its hands. The reptile looked down at me with absolute terror in its beady little eyes. "Who is your lord?" I demanded. "I ain't telling you nothing," it shrieked. "Then I shall find out myself." Crushed its windpipe and vertebrae. As I dropped its body to the ground, it occurred to me that I might have used hypnosis on it. I sighed, disappointed at the missed opportunity to glean some intel. After retrieving my blade, I continued my journey into the depths of the dungeon. It wasn't long before I got another chance. I tore into the creatures and tried to use hypnosis on the survivor, but I couldn't make a connection to its mind. At first, I thought my hypnosis was being blocked, but then I came to the realization that the mind was too simple to be forced in such a way. It was like trying to hypnotize a pupper. I tore its head off in frustration. Several more conflicts later, the hallway opened into a large room. Torches flickered to life as I entered, throwing shadows upon the smooth, grey walls. In the center of the room was a skeletal corpse sitting upon a golden throne. It looked lifeless, but I could feel massive amounts of magic emanating from it. Its eyes began to glow, and it rose from its throne, levitating a few inches from the ground. "Who dares enter my domain?" it asked. "Kyrian Yith," I replied. "And who might you be, Lich?" "What would my name matter to an insect that's about to be exterminated?" "Why would you want to know the name of an insect that you're about to exterminate?" I barely managed to dodge the ice spear it sent at me, and quickly tried to close the distance. Before I could, fire erupted from the floor and sent me reeling. The burns on my face began to heal, and I snarled at the creature before me. "Yeah, a vampire," it said. "I have no blood for you to suck, filth." Once my nose healed, I caught a familiar scent in the air. I grinned at the Lich and threw my blade at its face. A magical barrier caught the blade and sent it back from whence it came, but I had already closed the distance with the Lich. It drew back from me, but I grabbed its neck and squeezed, crushing the vertebra in my grasp. Its body crumpled to the ground as I caught its skull with my other hand. "You have bested me, it seems," it said. "Go on, finish me. I'll return again and again." "You lied to me," I grinned. "Pardon?" I followed the scent that approached the throne. Hidden in the throne's finery was a rounded crimson jewel. The invigorating scent was coming from this jewel. I struggled for a moment to remove the jewel from the throne, and once I was successful, I found that I was holding a disguised vial of blood. I held it up for the skull to see. "A phylactery. You do have blood." "Perhaps we can make a deal," the skull said. "I can give you gold and gems, even teach you ancient and terrible magics. What do you require in exchange for the safety of my phylactery?" "Why would I destroy it?" Why would I destroy it? What? What else would you do with it?" "You were once a mer, and I am a vampire." I grinned wildly, baring my fangs. "I'm going to do what vampires do." End of chapter. Ready? We want winked, quattro. Be 24, so 120. Good day, Vaka. Hope you're doing well. Oh, big stretch. Sounds good. Day-old rice is ripe for egg fried rice, I'm told. Oh, good. Alright, I'm going to move you on over to the next story, which is going to be Billy Bob. One chapter today, and then on to TV. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration in the web series. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read T-Boss, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Billy Bob Space Trucker and is part of the series. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 25. Mr. President, I want to be on this meeting. Governor Dundee, every time we have a diplomatic meeting with the UHG, you glare at them and tell them that they made a grave error kicking Australia out. That's because they did. We've been over this. They didn't want one of their member nations to be a country that waged war on birds and lost. We didn't lose the emo war. It was a tie. Not to mention virtually everything alive in your country is lethal to Xenos. How is that our fault? You've lost more politicians to wildlife than assassins. Just goes to show how tough we are. Your last Prime Minister, before we took you on as a state, invited the UHG officials to his home and wouldn't stop his pet croc from attacking them because he insisted they wrestle it. He only stopped it himself when the croc had torn one of their legs off. Your president had no trouble wrestling that croc. Your president had no trouble wrestling that croc. They were just sent weak officials. Your people are loud. Your tourists are obnoxious. Your people are loud. Your tourists are obnoxious. You've made an industry around showing off your super dangerous wildlife and fighting it for fun. You grill as much meat as possible, and your state seal features an outlaw fist fighting a shark and a croc at the same time. Ned Kelly, yeah. I know who he is. After all, you're Ned Dundee, and I'm sure that wasn't a mistake. President Cross set his hands on the governor's shoulders as he looked him in the eyes. Ned, face it. You belong with us Americans. We share so much in common. No one else on this planet wanted you, except us. We're in the middle of a war right now, and I don't need you antagonizing the UHG with your insistence on wrestling them to prove that they were wrong. The governor sighed. I just hate that they let loose those sheep shaggers next door. I just hate that they let those sheep shaggers next door in, but not us. Those sheep shaggers live in one of the most nicest islands we've got. It's a fucking shire, Ned. Screw 'em. We've got each other. Now 2 countries represent almost the entirety of the human military base. It's ours. It's our job to make the Xenos hate us so the rest of humanity can play nice. Besides, you weren't the only ones disappointed with how those negotiations went down. Are you still mad about the Canadians? It was those weirdo Frenchy Canadians and how I know it. It was those weirdo Frenchy Canadians, and I know it. We'd totally have let them keep that commie health care, but no way we were going to repeat everything in frog talk. He scowled for a moment and then looked back at Ned. But we have you now. Woo. But we have you now. You wrestle crocs, we wrestle gators. Come on, you know we're in the right country. Come on, you know you're in the right country. I guess, could we make Ned Kelly Day a national holiday? Take it up with Congress. Maybe sell it as Badass Outlaw Day. We have a few outlaws of our own, that after all. Yeah, that might work. Here, I'll let you join me in the meeting, but be nice. No wrestling, okay? Okay, promise? Promise. The president nodded at that, then adjusted his flag cloak and picked up his eagle standard as he carried it into the meeting room. Ned followed behind him, adjusting his hat lined with croc teeth and the giant knife tucked into his croc skin belt. The assembled UHG officials in their nice suits weren't surprised when the president slammed his standard into the ground, puncturing the floor so that it would stand behind his seat. Then he sat down as Ned stood behind him, arms crossed as he glared at the officials. What's this about? Cross asked first. You started a war without the rest of the galaxy. You started a war with the rest of the galaxy and dragged us into it. His counterpart was Sophie Doerflinger. His counterpart was Sophie Doerflinger. Once she heard this. Once she was head of the Sussex Bank, but had tried her hand at politics and somehow managed to find that perfect mesh of utterly ruthless yet maternal. Her hair was as grey as her suit, and her face was so perfectly neutral it looked like a statue. She played the varied and numerous special interest groups against one another and maintained a perfect balance in the UHG. Thus, she answered 90% of the press conference questions with no comment. Correction, the rest of the galaxy. Correction, the rest of the galaxy decided to declare war on us and didn't bother to check facts. You devastated the core colony of the Galactic Secret Service species after they started killing and kidnapping your citizens unlawfully. We never asked you to intervene. You didn't need to. Your redneck criminal's harboring a terrorist and won't give her up. Our law-abiding citizen has a contract to guard a diplomat from being kidnapped and tortured. You've started an alliance with a species akin to space Nazis, from what I can tell. The Livertonians are not space Nazis. But while we're on the topic, the Geneva Art Museum has a wonderful exhibit on the early 1900s art. Did you guys keep all the receipts for those? Have you tried opening diplomatic channels with the Crusticans? We don't negotiate with our space crab terrorists. Why don't you send your pet psychopath away and we can discuss this like civilized people? Careful. I hear Ireland might succeed and join us once. Careful. I hear Ireland might secede and join us since you're all sticks in the mud who keep telling them not to drink so much. I might have even more uncivilized citizens soon. It's for their own good. Them and the Russians drink far too much. Picking on the Ruskies too? Maybe they'll join us. He was quiet for a moment and then shook his head at the same time as Sophie. No, never mind. They never do it. But maybe we should discuss this one-on-one. She nodded and tilted her head to the door as the assembled UHG officials rose, taking their folders and notebooks. Ned looked down and the president nodded before he began to walk out as well. Soon they were alone in the large conference room. Just the president of the USA and the Just the president of the USA and the president of the UHG. She spoke first. Did your children get the gifts I sent? Oh yes, they're wonderful. Thank you again. It's always so thoughtful. It's always so thoughtful. Well, I figured someone has to buy them something cultural. And your grandkids? Oh, they love the toys you sent. Just can't get those things in Europe. They're so crass and obscene. And tell your wife we look forward to the next time she brings them over to visit. And same to your kids and grandkids. We had a blast. It's too bad we have to pretend not to interact. He shrugged. The nature of politics. He reached into his suit and pulled out a 1-pound package of uncut premium bacon, sliding it across the table to her. She smiled and pulled up her purse, pulling out a giant bar of Swiss chocolate, and slid it to him as he said, You know, we could easily have lackeys do this for us. Oh, but it's so fun. We get to be spies, was her reply. He laughed at that and picked up the bar of chocolate as she dropped the package of bacon into her purse. Nice line about the art museum. I had a writer make up a list of quips for me. I won't lie. But seriously, the Irish aren't happy. The central admin keeps turning down some petition. They want to make us designate a Feck Island Day. They want us to... They want to make us designate a Feck England Day, who in turn want us to recognize St. Patrick's Day as Drunk Potato Day. The Japanese and the Chinese still won't let up about this or that. Greece still wants reparations from Germany for the invasion. Which one? Does it really matter? I guess not. We're a unified government, but everyone still hates each other. Now they're just trying to take it out through paperwork. How do you keep all the states in line? Sports. We promote certain rivalries so specific areas concentrate their hatred against only certain other areas rather than everyone else. New York and New England, San Francisco and LA, Alabama and itself. Same with Oregon. We were a little worried about Australia. We were a little worried about Australia, but we've got a nice rivalry brewing between Sydney and Dallas, plus Melbourne and Miami. Not to mention they still rag on New Zealand about being full of sheepshaggers. Now, about the war we're in. I know you don't have any regular communications with them, but are you aware of the council vote? Yeah, we're aware. The founders are ramping up, and the remembered nations are dragging their heels, but they're getting ready to join in. We're prepping to send a very large force to the Libertonian colony and home planet, and then just turtle up. After that, we'll shut down the FTL gates in the enemy space and start pushing our way out, system by system. Boomer juice. I'm fairly sure that the member species won't be invading our colonies, but it's clear that we can't directly support you. All right then. The Spetchnets and Mossheads are suddenly full of American citizens? They're filling out the paperwork. Also, due to some miscommunication about tariffs, you're going to be receiving 5 super tanks of material every week until we can get our production up. Also, we reviewed our records and apparently we made a mistake. All uranium mines are actually on American territory. Whoops, our mistake. Whoops, our mistake. No harm done. What about your bases in Centauri Abyss and the Mirian to reverse? She sighed it out at that. We were so careful. How did you find out? He just stared at her and arched an eyebrow. Do you really need to spy on us that bad? He shrugged. Do you really need to spy on us that bad? He shrugged. We'll be giving the territory we gained to you, but I want to keep one planet to do. We'll be giving the territory we gained to you, but I want to keep one planet to dedicate to. But I want to keep one planet to dedicate to our hero. Who's that? An old citizen you so rudely called a redneck, of course. No one other than Billy Bob, space trucker. Billy Bob, space trucker. The USS Predator was the newest Special Forces cruiser in the fleet. It had one of the latest skip drives and the best stealth technology there was. The Crabs had been the secret police so long that they'd grown lazy, preferring to tell people to forget what they saw rather than avoid detection altogether. The cruiser had a smaller crew complement because of the space needed for the stealth tech and the large skip drive, but they still had a full complement of 50 Archangel and no reduction to their offensive capabilities. Billy Bob was staring straight at it, and from less than 100 yards it's close. And from less than 100 yards as it closed in to dock, and he still had trouble seeing the damn thing against the deck. And he still had trouble seeing the damn thing against the darkness of space. Finally, there was a clang of the magnetic dock, and the airlock opened to let 10 new black power suited commandos advance onto the Rosie. Is this really necessary? Billy Bob asked as they stomped aboard. Maybe they were just walking, but the magnets in their boots kept stomping down. Yes, we have to comb the ship for any bugs just in case before it's torched. Yes, we have to comb the ship for any bugs just in case before we torch it and leave, Crunch was saying as the new Archangel smiled past except the last one. Not bad, Fruity Pebbles. Glad to see that you let a civvy take the lead on a rescue mission to get off the planet. said the so far nameless Archangel. Before Captain Crunch could reply, Billy Bob simply said, "Who the fuck are you, Admiral Snackbar? Get the fuck off my ship." The towering power suit turned to Billy Bob. "I am Major Grenshaw. I outrank you, Lieutenant. This is my fucking ship. I'm flying it, and in charge of it, which makes me... I'm flying it, and in charge of it makes me it my I'm flying it and in charge of it, which makes it my ship. I don't remember giving you permission to board my ship. I let the others pass just fine because they're following orders. But you, I don't think I want you on my ship. Besides, you just called me a lieutenant, which I am, which means I'm not a civvy. Gotta mark you down for that one." "You can't talk to a superior officer that way, Lieutenant. I think I just fucking did. Now get off my ship. The ship was not assigned to you. There is no CO on the ship. You can't deny my permission to board. Well then, just fuck off in general." "You're speaking to an Archangel, Lieutenant," the Major growled out. "I've been speaking to them. Some of them saved my life and the life of my friend, so you don't really scare me." Billy Bob stared up at the figure before him, knowing that the commando inside would no doubt mop the floor with his face outside the suit. But that wasn't really the point. "You have no authority over me, Lieutenant." The figure moved forward, and Billy Bob had to jump aside to avoid being knocked down by him. Then Billy Bob smiled at Crunch. "Want to show me to your CO?" They boarded the Predator then, nodding at the extra Archangels waiting inside the airlock. "Expecting this to be a Xeno trap, were you?" Billy Bob asked. Expecting this to be a trap, were you?" Billy Bob asked. Billy Bob asked one of the back baseplate. "Never can be too careful, sir," Billy Bob shrugged, as Crunch led him through the square hallway designed... As Crunch led him through the square hallway designed to easily accommodate the power suits. The bridge was at the center of the upper deck of the ship, which took them a good 5 minutes to walk to. Billy Bob had forgotten what it was like on these giant ships. He missed his Longhorn. Soon enough, they were passing by 2 more Archangels guarding the bridge, and he was suddenly amongst normal humans again. Humans in uniforms, but humans even so. He looked around at the various officers and staff on the bridge, looked his way. The bridge was arrayed in a general T with the pilot, co-pilot, and navigator up at the junction, and the rest arranged in the main line. There was a command chair at the end of the line to Billy Bob's right, but he didn't see anyone sitting in it. "Right, who's this captain?" "Right, who's the captain?" One of the figures in blue turned around to face him, a woman he'd guessed to be in her late 40s or early 50s. Blue eyes, black and white hair. She didn't seem to believe in coloring it. "I'm captain here. You're the VIP?" "Yes, about that. I want a promotion." The woman frowned at that, tilting her head a little as she looked at him. "Is that right, Lieutenant?" "Yes. I'm well aware that this is probably my one and only chance to leverage the brass to do anything I want, so I'm going for it." "And why do you want to be promoted?"
"Same reason as anyone else. More power, more money. I'm sure you've got a direct FTL line to someone who can promote me."
"I assure you, Lieutenant, I won't be promoting anyone so they can I won't be promoting anyone so they can commandeer my vessel." Billy Bob shook his head at that.
No, you misunderstood. I'm a pilot. That makes me Space Force, really. Not Navy, per se."
The captain sighed and shook her head. "I always wish we'd come up with a better name for that, and what would you achieve being a higher rank Space Force officer? I don't have any small craft on the ship, just the Navy and Archangels.
Bingo. And thanks to the rules of officer division, I can't boss around Navy officers since the wall... I can't boss around Navy officers, since well-being of the ship comes first. But I can," he pointed at her with a smile as he let it complete the thought.
"You can give orders to ground forces." She looked a little confused.
"Ah, there you go. which means that while in the course of my mission, I am in need of which means that while in the course of my mission, I'm in need of proceeding my which means that while in the course of my mission, I'm in need of the proceeding of my own. I get to tell the ground forces assigned to protect me too. He pointed at her again as she thought that one over. Back off, he ventured. Ding, 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 we have a winner. He smiled at her as she just looked a bit more confused. Let me get this straight. You want to be promoted so that you can tell your bodyguards to stop? Yeah. I know where this is going. I'm a VIP. I'm important. They want me to survive, blah, blah, blah. I'm not worth risking archangels on. These Xenos are rather bad at killing me, aside from the museum, but that was a trap. Why waste a whole cruiser on me? So you want me to contact the brass and have them promote you, just so that you can make sure the brass doesn't get to baby. So you want me to contact the brass and have them promote you, just so that you can make sure the brass doesn't get to baby you with commandos that you think... So you want me to contact the brass and have them promote you, just so that you can make sure the brass doesn't get to baby you with commandos who you think would be better used. With commandos who you think could be put to better use. You get a 1. You got it in 1, he said with a smile. And what makes you think that they don't... You got it in 1. And what makes you think they don't just demote you instead? I'm friends with a Libertonian diplomat. Ah yes, the birds, Space Eagle Raptors. Their 4 hands ends in super sharp claws. Do they? Maybe they'll be more useful than I thought, she said. Maybe they'll be more useful than I thought. She thought it over and then shrugged. I guess I'll talk to the brass. I'm coming with you, he said. They walked to the back of the bridge as she punched in a code in the door and waved him into the room beyond. It was a comms room with 2 techs hunched over terminals and a large screen at the back. Get the brass on the line, the captain said simply, as one of the techs typed down his terminal. Then the screen in front of them began to show a video of some old big band playing song. What the hell is this? What the hell is this? I think that's the brass section, Billy Bob pointed out. They looked over to the tech who smiled. Sorry, sir, you didn't specify which brass, so I figured you'd just bring up a whole section. The captain reached over and smacked the side of his head as he laughed. Goddamn smartass. Tech kept typing, and then they saw a screen with another tech on it, looking up at them. Central. This is Commodore Verne of the Predator, who's awake right now. Betty Bob looked over and noted she was the equivalent of a colonel of ground forces. Billy Bob looked over and noted she was the equivalent of a colonel for ground forces. The term captain in the Navy now just meant a ship's CO, while the old rank had been replaced with Commodore in an attempt to make it less confusing. It hadn't worked. Now it was just confusing in a different way when you needed to appoint a Commodore to a ship squadron. Vice Admiral Tethers and Major General Brewster are both awake. Patch me through, please. The tech nodded and tapped at his console on the screen. The screen went blue after about 1 minute. The screen went blue, and after about a half minute... The screen went blue, and after about a minute half. The screen went blue, and after about a minute and a half of it... I wonder if it's a minute and a half or a half a minute. I think it's half a minute. The screen went blue, and after about half a minute, it came up with a skinny-looking man in a white uniform. He had a gaunt look about him. Vice Admiral Tethers speaking. This is Commodore Verne. We're waiting on Major General Brewster, sir. The Admiral nodded and waited until the other half screen of the The Admiral nodded and waited until the other half of the screen filled in with the image of the barrel-chested man in a green uniform shaving with a bowie knife. What do you want? Ah, it's the Commodore Vern. This is Commodore Vern. I have the VIP for my mission here. He wants a promotion. The General stopped shaving and looked over while the Admiral frowned. Come again, Commodore, Tether said as Billy Bob stepped forward. I want you to make me a colonel. That way I can order your archangels to stop following me around and get back to the war. You're an important individual, Lieutenant. The Admiral began to shuffle through the data slates on his desk. Just call me Billy Bob. Look, I know you guys want me to stay on this ship all safe and sound, but you're going about it wrong. You don't need to have a full cruiser and 50 archangels protecting 2 people. There's no way this gets to the capital anyway. What you need is to have this ship helping the war, assassinating Xenos, and fucking shit up. Think you know more than I do? The General asked, his face half covered in shaving cream. I think you just didn't think about it. You figured send some commandos to babysit me. I got this far, didn't I? Do you really think a single cruiser, even one this nice, would get past everything they got and get me to the capital undetected? You both know I need a CIA, not the military at this point. What has that got to do with this? The General asked. Make me a colonel so I can firmly tell your archangels to feck off and get back to killing. I take my ship to the local black market station and wait for the spooks to show up. You get your cruiser back to the war. In a week or so, I show up at the capital, and the Libertonian does whatever she needs to. I become the CIA's problem. The General just shrugged at that. Sure. General Brewster, we need to discuss this more carefully, Tethers urged. Nah, make him colonel already. Commodore, you tell the angels to get back to killing. The General tapped on the console in front of him, and there was a ping on the terminal behind Billy Bob. Then the screen went dark. The Admiral shook his head and tapped on his own console before his side of the screen went dark too. Billy Bob blinked. Was that all it took? The Commodore shrugged. There's a war on, Colonel. They'd rather have a cruiser and Commodore... They'd rather have a cruiser and commandos than a political pawn. Billy Bob laughed and turned to look at the terminal behind him. It had a small 3D printer, which was spitting out rank tabs. He picked them up and snapped them onto his collar of his plaid shirt. All right, well, it's been nice, Commodore, but I'm heading back to my ship, he said and gave her a salute. She returned it with a smirk. He walked back out and nodded at Crunch. I'd shake your hand, but you'd crush mine. It's been nice, Crunch. Thanks for saving my ass. I owe you some drinks once this is all over. He gave her another salute, which she returned. Come find me. Come find me. I'll buy a few for you, too. He grinned and then quickly began to jog back down the way they'd come from. He'd wanted to be off the ship as soon as possible. He didn't mind military service for obvious reasons, but the sooner he got this moving, the sooner he'd be back to his Longhorn with Emily, and he didn't have to worry about the brass changing their minds. He passed the archangels guarding the boarding tube and quickly walked back across the Rosie. Looking around, he found one of the archangels still scanning the ship with a handheld sensor. You there, Sergeant something. Where's the Admiral snack bar? Who? Asked. Who? He saw the new tabs on Billy Bob's shirt. Sir? Major Cockface, whatever his name was. Oh, Major Cockface is on the bridge, sir. Billy Bob nodded and quickly jogged through the Atlas and up to the bridge. He saw a figure in a power suit arguing with Emily over something and didn't even need to ask to know what he was. And didn't even need to ask to know what this was. And didn't even need to ask to know that this was his man. Hey, Admiral Snack Bar. The figure spun around. What? Billy Bob pointed to the tabs on his shirt. Get the fuck off my ship. And so ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob, Space Trucker. Definitely has the gift of the gab. That was the wrong button. Thankfully, I tried closing the recording software before saving it. Not good. That definitely falls into the not good category. Dookie dookie. There are 36 chapters, 37 chapters. Buddy Bob. Finale at 36, epilogue at 37. Two, four. Short return fast story, and then 2 TFOS. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the... Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called You Need a Permit, written by Fornicus Fogbottom. Commander Zorg looked down on the untouched world from the bridge of his colony ship. 14 generations of his people had been born on and crewed this vessel, crossing the void to reach this blue ball, carrying the entirety of their civilization cryosleep. It was everything they had hoped for. From here, they could see the land that scientists had predicted, and it was covered in lush green and chlorophyll-bearing plant life. Their probes were returning mountains of data that said that was a pristine arc of life with no sentient species, just a wealth of lower life forms with a staggering amount of biodiversity. When they had detected high levels of oxygen and methane in the atmosphere, proving their planet was not the only area. When they had detected high levels of oxygen and methane in the atmosphere, proving their planet was not the only place life existed in the universe, it had almost destroyed their society and caused a holy war amongst the main religions. The survivors had built the ship, and they had climbed in and flung themselves off their dying world with little hope of actually making it here. It sat perfectly in a habitable zone of its yellow star that was so much like their own before it started to swell and devour their inner solar system. The axial tilt was slightly more than their homeworld, but this left much of the planet habitable for them. Well, it would depend on my wife and family and stuff. But if I were a 20-something-year-old with no, wife and kids and stuff, yeah, sure. I would go. Left much of the planet habitable for them much of the planet habitable for them to orbit around. For the crew who maintained the ship, time was no longer measured in orbits of their planet around the sun that would have already eaten their homeworld. It was measured in generations who had weathered every adversity to deliver them to this garden. They had chosen a place to land based on their probe data that didn't appear to have any dangerous life and mild weather. Whether Zorg thought to himself he was going to feel something other than the stale space air. They had predicted that they would need vaccinations to protect themselves from the local microbes, and they were almost ready. The landing would be on a chain of islands in the northern hemisphere, a very short distance from one of the major land masses. Oh, how the Creator had blessed them. The landing was smooth, even though the wonderful atmosphere was very thick, and this planet boasted a tremendous magnetosphere. The landing was smooth, even though the wonderful atmosphere was very thick with this planet. The landing was smooth, even though the wonderful atmosphere was very thick, and this planet boasted a tremendous magnetosphere. The gravity was only slightly higher than the ship and slightly less than their home world. The gases weren't perfect for it. The oxygen and nitrogen were both a little high, but a good robust breath of air never hurt anyone. Zorg couldn't imagine this much water. His first step out of the shuttle was bliss. Clouds. Those were real clouds, not projections on the center beam of the... Those were real clouds, not projections on the center beam of the cylinder habitat. The vegetation covering the ground was like a carpet, and he forgot his age and rolled in it with the ground. And he forgot his age and rolled in it with his grandchildren. Early on the 10th revolution of the planet, they were taking their first meal since waking at the table they had set. Early on the 10th revolution of the planet, they were taking their first meal since waking at a table they had set up on a hill overlooking a vast sodium water ocean when it happened. A curious-looking creature walked up to a short distance and greeted them in their own language. "Good day to you, gentlefolk." First contact with a sentient being, but how did it speak their language? The children he had under the children hid under the table, and the male folk readied their hand blasters. "Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. I mean you no harm." Zorg slowly stood and walked towards this creature when it spoke again. "Hi, yeah. I know it's a bother, and I apologize profusely for interrupting your meal, but I am Ranger Smith, and you need a permit to camp here." Zorg finally found his wits enough to reply, "I am Commander Zorg. It is nice to meet you, gentle sir. I apologize if this is rude to ask, but how do you know our language?" Ranger Smith patted a box in his belt. "I don't really. This box is translating for me. Such a small craft, I figured you had to be from a large ship in orbit. I've been monitoring since you entered orbit, and my computer worked it out for me." Ranger Smith waved to the children. "That ship sure is a big girl, and I thought it odd you came in sublight. Just took you forever. Just took you for sightseers until you landed. My computer doesn't recognize your species or ship, so I figured that would be a better... I figured what would be bother letting you stay. My computer doesn't recognize your species or ship, so I figured what would be the bother in letting you stay a few nights while we worked out the translation. Good choice of spots. Island is lovely this time of year." Ranger Smith flipped through the documents he had in hard case binder. "Ah, yes, the permit, though. I know it's a bother, but we all have to do our best to keep Earth clean and green. Sorry, could you spell that name for me, Commander?" Z-O-R-G. Any pets? No? How many in your party? 10 now, but 1.2 billion in total. Oh, heavens, I'm really sorry, but even with the permit, we only allow 100 people on the surface at a time. I apologize again if this ruins your plans. Zorg was thoroughly confused now. I'm sorry, gentle sir, but I do not understand what is going on. We thought this planet was uninhabited and came to settle here to start our civilization over. Oh, well, I'm very sorry. That won't be possible. Earth is a park. It took us 500 years to return her to her natural state. I'm going to have to ask you to come to my office or my shuttle to sort this out and see what we can do. I parked just down here. I didn't want the engines making a mess of your meal. Zorg followed Ranger Smith down to the beach and a short ways to a very sleek-looking craft. Once inside, he was seated in an office that reminded him of his own. Just enough clutter to be comfortable, but still clean enough and organized. But still clean enough and organized. I'm assuming by you not being in the record that this is your first visit to the Galactic Federation space. Zorg was no less confused, so decided to lay out the whole situation for Ranger Smith. And after he concluded, Ranger Smith nodded a final time and replied, Well, a bit of a pickle, but easily sorted out. 14 generations. Really? That's a long trip just to be disappointed. Well, the good news is that we have a world where you can settle just a few systems over, though. Well, the good news is that we have a world where you can just settle just a few systems over. Though your ship being only sublife capable is an issue that we'll have to work around. The computer has already made New Terra aware of the situation, that an ambassador should be here within the hour. Earth is a gem, but we put it back to her natural state. You should see what we can do when we're trying to make a place comfortable. Ranger Smith extended a hand and said, Welcome to the Galactic Federation. End of story. Little quickie on the re-TFOS. Oops. Do the whole thing. Yeah, this one's friendly. That one is not. Yeah, on to TFOS. 2 of them. Don't worry, these ones are a bit longer. 2766. First contact. Greetings, ladies and managers, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called First Contact, written by Gloomius. Ooh, that monster is fighting back, but I will win in the end. Ellis Taylor sat in the small, cramped cockpit of his craft. He was going to be the first person to try a new subspace coordinate system. He would be inputting the stellar coordinates of Abraxan Proxima 2 and jump from Centauri system. The jump was calculated to be 13 light years away. He would be making it in less than 5 minutes. He called the research base on the planet below him. Starbeam 1, this is Armstrong Base. I'm showing green across the board. This is Armstrong Base. This is Armstrong Base. We are getting good readings here as well. Communication space link is holding. You'll go for launch. Ellis could barely hold his excitement, and when he received the launch order... Ellis could barely hold his excitement in when he received the launch order. Starbeam 1, this is Armstrong Base. I am Casir. Starbeam 1 to Armstrong Base. I am disconnecting now. Ellis heard the claws detach from his craft through the vibrations. He pushed forward on the throttle to move himself away from the mothership, Saitama, carrying him. Once he was a full kilometer away from the mothership, he started to ready the ship for launch. Shielding, check. Life support, check. Drive spooder, check. Slip space connection, check. Slip space drive, check. He ran through the checks necessary for launch in his head. Once he finished the left front floodlight, he started checking things in his cockpit. Extra LSP, check. Parachute, check. Emergency kit, check. Duct tape, check. Clear duct tape, check. Honorary MP3 player, check. He glanced at his own yoke. He laughed at his own joke as he thought about his last entry. When he got to the bottom of the list, he paused before checking the last two. L-105 assault rifle, check. 8 5.56 NATO Stanag. 8 5.56 NATO Stanag magazines for L-105 assault rifle, check. He was always unhappy at the last two. It wasn't the fact that the L-105 was based off its predecessor, the L-85, which was renowned for being crap. It was the fact that they made sure that he had an assault rifle in the cabin, just in case. In case of what? He was going through slipspace and arriving at a friendly base. Why could he possibly need it? He pushed his doubts to the back of his mind and went ahead to launch. Initiating shielding, he combed the base. Initiating shielding, he combed to the base. Confirmed, came the reply. Initiating spooling, he had already punched in the coordinates, so it would just have to launch the engines. So he would just have to launch the engine. Confirmed, came the reply. 15 seconds till launch. He was overjoyed. Ellis shut off his radio's transmitting abilities. It was tradition, since the first slipspace jump, to do so that the coordinating base didn't hear two things: the screaming of the crew and the fact that the crew was blasting Starman by David Bowie through their internal speakers. He plugged in the MP3 and pressed play. The song was already cued for this moment. He braced for the jolt that he would be feeling in 10 seconds. Slipspace rupture detected, the captain of the mothership yelled. Ellis looked out of the window and saw, to his horror, an insurgent craft coming out of warp. The enemy ship fired something at the mothership he had just undocked from. His ship's slipstream navigational artificial intelligence spoke up. Nuclear launch detected. Calm female voice of the AI. Ellis could do nothing. There was no abort button for the slipstream drive yet, and he didn't have the power to divert the shields to take full blast. He could sit and wait for death. There was a flash as the nuke detonated on the left section of the Saitama. His ship was hit by an EMP blast, hitting the energy shield. Unbeknownst to Ellis, the EMP had also fired. The EMP had also fried all navigational systems and safety interlocks in his ship. Without energy shields, Ellis was dead. He closed his eyes, waiting for the extreme radiation of slipspace to bring him to the embrace of death. 7 years as a Navy combat pilot, and I still get taken out by the innies. Ironic. 7 years as a Navy combat pilot, and I still get taken out by innies. Ironic. The slipspace drive kept working as if nothing had happened. It was 2 seconds until launch. On the last second, the energy shielding was automatically regenerated by the warp bubble. This was an automated safety mechanism that worked by rerouting overflow power generated by the slipstream node to the shields for a moment. A safety mechanism implemented for one of those just-in-case moments. Ellis had not realized what had happened. He thought that he had finally been taken. He opened his eyes to confirm his suspicions. He still found himself in the cockpit. He also found that the site timer was still playing. Oh, no. He also found the Starman was still playing. He looked out the front window. He saw nothing. His AI spoke up. Slip space entry successful. What? He was alive. He knew that much. Nothing was hurt on him, but his ship was crippled. Most of the electronic instruments were fried. He had no solar heating. He had no solar heading, map, or altitude. Luckily, the computer that the AI was on was okay. He inspected the chip that the AI could enter in case of emergency. It was also in a good shape. He started typing a command into the computer. Allow AI setting change. AI setting change requires password. XME underscore OPSYS underscore override. OVRDALL. Override allow. Yes, nice. OVRDALLOW underscore. Correct password. Enter AI setting command for status. AI status. Data announcement enabled. Personality disabled. AI disabled. VA mode enabled. All AI comp dot underscore VA mode disabled. AI disabled. All comp underscore run dot AI dot exe underscore enabled underscore pers underscore 100% underscore 0 RSTC underscore full op underscore pre img underscore pri emg. He pressed enter on that last command. The computer froze. He knew it would. He just didn't know if it would come back or not. Something flickered in front of the craft, pulling Ellis's attention to the front. As he looked out the window, he saw the telltale signs of slipspace exit from the inside. He braced for the jolt coming out and hoped that his radio still worked. The crack of slipspace exit was heard through the ship. Ellis was thrown forward with considerable force. He ruled the kinetic absorbers must be fecked up as well. He was close to a planet, scarily. But there was a ship ahead of him. It must have been a new one, as he did not recognize the design. He attempted hailing it, but to no avail. Thinking that the radio must be fecked, he used the floodlights to communicate in Morse. Before he could even say anything, a red launch shot out of the ship and hit him. Most of the shot bounced off the energy shield, but it was enough to convince Ellis to leave. He pointed the ship towards the planet and burned whatever fuel was left in the tank. He hit the planet's atmosphere, going 2,500 meters per second. He was hoping that the energy shields would keep him from burning up. Being roughly the shape of a stubby beetle with wings, the ship cut through the atmosphere easily. Ellis saw what looked like a swamp and aimed towards it. He was going about 600 meters per second, and the ground was closing fast. He fired the emergency retro rockets, meant to slow the person down. He fired the emergency retro rockets, meant to slow the person down when they were in space. They dropped him to 100 meters per second. He flared the emergency air brake and deployed the drag chute at around 100 meters from the ground. He pulled back on the joystick as hard as he could. The last thing he remembered was the loud snapping that his harness made as he slammed into the ground. Ellis woke up to the comforting sounds of high-pitched beeping and alarms. He didn't realize what they meant until he heard the telltale suit emergency voice. Suit breach detected. His vision was fuzzy, but he could see cracks in his faceplate. He started pulling out the clear tape. Maybe the cabin is holding, and I'm not really leaking, he thought to himself as he slowly pulled out the tape. Oxygen 10%. Nope, I need to patch this up. He knew he was unnaturally calm, but it was working in his favor. His hands were shaking less than they should be as he used the tape to patch the cracks in his faceplate. Oxygen 5%. He pressed the final piece of tape in place, and the suit gave a long beep, indicating that suit pressure was stable. He turned to the AI's computer. He was positive that it was dead. but then he saw that chip was glowing blue. He took it out and inserted it into the slot in its ARM computer. He then turned on his helmet HUD system. The crisp blue laser and LED projection system was distorted, proving that the reflective crystal layer in his helmet faceplate was also broken. The suit then screamed at him again, "Oxygen 3%. Ellis came back to his senses and detached the old LSP. The suit still screamed at him for that. "No life support pack detected. Replace immediately." Ellis grabbed the extra LSP and clicked it into place. "Life support pack detected. Resource check. Oxygen full. Nitrogen full. Battery full. MMU fuel full." Ellis took a deep breath, then reached to the case on his right, pulling out the L-105 assault rifle. He checked the chamber and started grabbing magazines for the weapon. As he put the last magazine into the holder, his HUD informed him of the detected AI. "Hello?" it asked, maintaining a feminine voice from before. "Hello, can you hear me?" "Yes." "Who is this?" it responded. "I'm Ellis Taylor. You and I are stuck on a planet with incoming innies. I am going to keep you out of enemy hands until I die. If I die, you need to terminate yourself, okay?" "Understood. Where are we?" Ellis looked out through the cracked front window of the craft. "No fucking idea." He reached for the red handle under the front console. Once he found it, he braced. If anyone was waiting for him, they would shoot him the second the canopy was off. He steeled himself, pulled. The explosive bolts in the canopy made it shoot off with a terrifying speed. Ellis hopped over the craft's wall to the left and sprinted to the nearby forest. Nothing shot at him, which he found was a positive. However, he grabbed the pilot's knife on his belt and cut into one of the trees nearby. He was wearing the traditional prison suit spacesuit. He was wearing the traditional prison suit spacesuit, meaning that he was in a bright orange flight suit. He tried to use the tree sap to attach leaves and branches onto him, hopefully concealing him. He was not sure how long he sat in a pile of leaves, branches, and tree sap, but eventually he saw movement. 5, maybe 6 people, all dressed in a uniform he didn't recognize. Some of them seemed to have augmentations for extra limbs. Knowing that his external microphone was off, he asked the AI, who he named Naya, to turn on the suit's NV. Ellis was sure that he was still confused. Ellis was sure that he was still concussed, because there was no way that whatever he was looking at was human. 2 of them looked like humans, but they were much taller than the average human and had fur. Obviously, females if their physiology was like humans. 3 had 4 arms, but were bipedal and scaly. There was a 6th, but it was hard to describe. There was a 6th, but it was hard to describe what it looked like due to the armor. Ellis was positive he was still concussed now. "Naya, you seeing this?" The AI responded with a fear in her voice. "Those are aliens." "So I'm not still concussed," he responded hopefully. "Hell no, you're still concussed to hell," the AI responded, back to her old self. The one in the big suit put down its gun and started looking around the ship. It had pulled out some kind of bag from its back. It began looking around the ship. It was inspecting the cockpit when it stopped and pointed at the console. At that moment in time, Ellis had suddenly become acutely aware of the blood running down his face and the blood that was in between the cracks of his faceplate. "They know that something was in it. Great." "Hey, do you sense that?" Naya piped up from inside his head. "No, what?" There is a group surrounding them." Just as the AI said that, multiple new aliens popped out around the group, inspecting his ship. Much to his surprise, the surrounded aliens dropped their weapons and put their hands up. I guess some things do cross with worlds. I guess some things do go across worlds. These new aliens look more bug-like, with more chitin and sharp edges on them. Ellis was just fine to let this play out. They get captured, I follow them to a ship, and get the feck out of here. Despite not understanding the culture, there were some things that Ellis could not let go unpunished. He watched as the group that was unspectrum. Cheers, Yamashisha. Hopefully you'll see you tomorrow. What constituted. He watched as the group that was inspecting the ship was brought to their knees. What constituted as the leader in Ellis's mind walked up to them and drew his sidearm. Ellis knew where this was going. He'd seen war crimes in his lifetime before, but that did not mean that he would let them happen. He clicked the safety off and started squeezing the trigger. He was about halfway through the pull when he was about halfway through the pull when he thought about the fact that the weapon of this caliber was going to do nothing against a fully armored opponent. It was too late to stop himself, though. The first 3 shots rang out. The bug thing was torn limb from limb as the bullets hit. He switched targets, taking down another one. He kept firing as there was one behind the one that just killed him. He kept firing as there was one behind the one he just killed. One of the cat people things took advantage of things and grabbed one of their rifles. He stopped long enough to reload the rifle. However, they'd figured out his position now and were ready for him. The next time he peeked over, he was immediately hit in the faceplate. Another spiderweb of cracks showed up. The suit started beeping at him again. This time he used the reflective visor layer to seal it. The gold-tinted plate slammed down in front of and locked. Slammed down in front and locked. The suit did another long tone of indicator good seal. The suit did another long tone to indicate a good seal. He stood up, seeing that everyone was dead. He stood up, seeing that everything was dead, but he could not find the group that had been inspecting his ship. Almost immediately after standing up, he was hit in the leg. "Crap!" he screamed out in shock. He had dropped the gun. Suit breach detected. He could see the bug thing walking towards him. It stood over him, raised its rifle, then disappeared. Ellis looked around for a minute, trying to find the bug thing. Suit breach detected. The second alert woke him from his trance. He grabbed the roll of silver duct tape that was on his harness and started frantically wrapping his leg. When he had added half an inch of duct tape evenly over the hole, he laid back down. Immediately afterward, he was pinned and brought face to face with one of the cat humans. It was yelling something at him. He didn't understand it at all. Finally, it pointed to him, then his ship. Ellis then nodded his head, pointed to him, and then his ship. Then gave a thumbs up again. The cat person got off of him, handed Ellis's weapon to the other cat person, and helped him up. The cat person allowed herself to be used as a crutch and helped him walk. He was unsure where they would want to take him, so he made them stop by his crash site. He yanked the AI computer and the slip-space transceiver out. He also made sure to bring the MP3 player. They helped him walk to a base not too far away. Ellis figured that their equivalent of medics wanted to take a look at him, but he wouldn't let them. He asked Naya to analyze the atmosphere to see if he could breathe it. He set up a transceiver in the computer. He set up a transceiver and computer. Once the two powered on, he ran the command. Ping 100.575.999.12 backslash SLP SPS SIC underscore backslash L backslash SLP SPS SIG underscore 25. He waited for what felt like an eternity, then got the text. 5 pings sent, 5 pings received. 1, 466 milliseconds. 2, 488 milliseconds. 3, 580. 570 milliseconds. 4, 360 milliseconds. 350 milliseconds. 360 milliseconds. 5, 392 milliseconds. Connection established. He connected his helmet mic to the system. Starbeam 1 to Armstrong Base. Armstrong Base, do you copy? 10 seconds later, he got a reply. Armstrong Base, this is Thunder. Armstrong Base to Starbeam 1, we copy. Where are you? We had a full loss of contact. Series. Thought I'd checked.
This is why I don't like. I prefer authors put links at the top of stories rather than the bottom of stories. Basically, that's just wasted a whole bunch of words. Yippee. Okay, so this is 5 parts.
Contact. Good question. Log on to my signal. Come get me. Bring warships. I'll identify friend or foe. We are not alone. Repeat, we are not alone. He leaned back, took off his helmet, lit something up his arm and computer, and pressed play on the MP3 player. Starman was loud enough for everyone in the building. Yeah.
Well, yes, it is a miniseries, but I wasn't planning on doing a miniseries. I was planning on doing a one-shot. Can't just suddenly do another 5 chapters in what's supposed to be a normal one-shot spot. I will save it, maybe do more at another point, but that's a wasted hour, half an hour, 45 minutes. I mean, it looks like it was actually written as a one-shot and then converted into series. And I suppose I could release it as just a one-shot, as it was intended. I don't know. Oh, man. Put it over there for now. All right, on to the next one. Okay, doesn't look like a series.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest narration of the web series. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Leviathan, written by Wooden Manager 969. She drifted almost helplessly across the remains of the once vast cosmos, the googleplex of eons having passed since she was decommissioned. Though she had long forgotten her name, she still retained the memory of what she was. A Leviathan-class space cruiser, the pride of the Confederation of Human Planets. She had fought in multiple battles to protect the human sectors of space, and she had done so for nearly 2 centuries before she was decommissioned, though why she had never been scrapped wasn't exactly clear. At the time of her decommissioning, her engines, the latest in gravimetric quantum warp technology, were mathematically disabled, just in case. Yet, as time passed, she slowly found herself losing power. With each passing century, she disabled what system she could, eventually disabling her memory system. Though she had thought that doing so would help to preserve those memories. Furthermore, she slowed down her internal system clocks down to a point where, from the perspective of the casual observer, it would appear as if she had already lost all power. Yet, energy still flowed along what few circuits she maintained, albeit at speeds so reduced that from her perspective, thousands of centuries went by in mere minutes. So it was, even as she reached the final end of the calculated ultimate age of the universe, the point at which space and time were expected to finally fail. Cheers, Alpha. Hope you have a good one. Little by little, she fought to hold on. Little by little, she would reduce her clock speed to preserve just a little bit longer. She would reduce her clock speed to persevere just a little bit longer. She was the last memory of humanity, whom had most certainly gone extinct a very long time ago. And she was likely a lost memory by then. Yet, she still fought to hold on, just in case. Logically, she knew her time was almost up. If she ever brought her processes back, if she ever brought her processes back to real time, it would be over for her in a mere hours, if not minutes. Still, she insisted on reducing her clock speeds, even to the point wherein she could reduce them no further, if just to hold out a little while longer. Even so, as the centuries passed, she would manage to garner some fraction of energy from dying Stion's star, or a bit of lingering background cosmic radiation. Her exothermic reactor hungered for what little it could get, though never enough to sustain more than a scant few moments for the otherwise dying Leviathan. Soon, even most remote scans of energy would be not enough. Soon, even most remote scans of energy would not be enough. Not even enough for the exothermic reaction to absorb. Her time was coming soon. Maybe a few dozen more centuries in real time. If even that. And yet it would pass before long, and then all memory of humanity would be forever lost. If forever even had a meaning at this point in which space and time were in a state that called thermal breakdown. If forever even had meaning at such a point in which space and time were in a state of cold thermal breakdown. Soon, she came to accept that she was all but spent. All she had left was what little ran her highly reduced sensor array. She had maintained just enough power to it. She had maintained just enough power to it. She had maintained just enough power to it that she could watch and perhaps find some small tidbits of energy to keep her functioning. Now, greetings, ladies. Now the energy of the sensor array was her final lifeline, and it wouldn't last long. However, just then, as she began to power down the array, there was a strange blip, An energy signature, out of seemingly nowhere. Even stranger, it seemed almost like it was heading her way. Perhaps, she considered, she would leave the array alone, even as she allowed herself to slightly accelerate her system's clocks to better process the strange energy signature. Indeed, the signature was heading towards her, and not merely in her direction. If anything, it seemed as if it was coming directly at her, almost like it had a purpose. No, that couldn't be. She had outlasted every being that had ever existed. She records of various species who had found her, tried to utilize her, failed, and left. By now, all of them were extinct. There was no logical way that this signature... There was no logical way this energy signature could be heading directly towards her. At least not intentionally. Yet her sensor array showed not only that it was indeed heading in her direction, but it had even adjusted its course and was heading straight towards her. Cheers, Shadow. Have a good one. Fair enough, Doug. Thank you for popping past. Very much appreciated. Towards her. Ping. Something latched onto her hull, and one of her airlocks. Strangely, though she had cut power to that airlock back before the stars became iron, she could feel an energy signal. Something there, and soon it had opened the airlock, and something had entered her hull for the first time in many millennia. Bringing up her clock speed to near real time and activating a long-dormant sensor, she saw her guests, bipeds, yet not merely bipeds, something more, something oddly familiar, something human. All right, we're aboard. Now what, Commander? She heard a female voice say in a very familiar and distinctly human tongue. If you want to save the old girl, we need to get the battle bridge and a couple of emergency power cells. If you want to save the old girl, we need to get to the battle bridge and a couple in the emergency power cell. If you want to save the old girl, we need to get to the battle bridge and couple in an emergency power cell. A male voice, a very strangely familiar male voice, said in reply. Will it be enough? The female asked. It has to be. I refuse to accept that we came all this way to fail now, the male said. Why was the male voice so familiar? Why had they come here? These were the types of questions she had not pondered since the death of the lost star. Yet now, even after the stars had died, humans had somehow appeared and had boarded her. Now, even as they moved through her, she could feel an energy signal, reminding her of systems she had long since shut down, possibly due to an emergency power cell that they claimed to have with them. Still, the male, his voice was too familiar, and yet she could not access her memories, the roster of her various crews, to find who this person was. Here we are, the male voice said suddenly, even as a twinge of energy powered a long-dormant keypad. Do you think it'll work? It has to. We never cleared her codes. They should still work, the male said, his tone an odd blend of confidence and fear. What was that? The woman almost shouted as space-time started to twist at the hull. That's our cue that we're almost out of time, the man said, even as he began to punch in an access code. That code... It was impossible. She'd kept all access in her primary memory, not by some sense of duty, rather to prevent unauthorized access. Yet now this was an accepted code, and not any code. It was once the access code of an intelligence officer who'd been an ensign aboard her. How this man had gotten that ensign code, how this man had gotten that ensign's code, especially after all these millennia, was strange. And yet, it was he. And yet, as he knew what he was doing, which was even stranger. Against her will, the doors to the battle bridge opened. They had entered the battle bridge. Not only that, but long-dormant systems were showing activity, possibly due to the emergency power cell. she would have initiated the internal defense grid if she had the power for it. What little she had now But what little she had, now that she was operating in real time for the first time in memory, was barely enough to last another 20 minutes. Her only hope of survival was these humans, whoever they were, and the emergency power cell they claimed to have with them. All right, once I disconnect the auxiliary power coupling and insert the emergency power cell, I need you to input that code I gave you into the console, giving us local manual control, said. One of the ship's automated defenses, the woman asked. Once you input that code, we'll have full control of the ship. From there, we'll have to hurry it to disengage the locks and engines. I just hope that she can hold a little longer. Before she could consider the words that had been spoken, she felt like something had been disconnected. A moment later, she could feel more power surging through her than she had in centuries, even as another access code was punched in, granting full local control to the battle bridge. Additionally, she could feel her subsystems that she had powered down, coming online again. In that moment, her long disconnected memories came back. That code, it had belonged to Ensign Albert Hertzmar. Ensign Albert Hertzmar. He had been part of the decommissioning crew. He'd always said that he'd be back. Yet this couldn't be possible. Alara, give me a system status report, the man demanded, his voice now recognized as that of the former ensign. Ensign Hertzmar, all systems are running at nominal. Gravimetric quantum engines are still locked out. Quantum engines are still in lockout, the ship said, recognizing its name. Well, that's about to change also. It's now Commander Hertzmar. Just so we're clear, the man said. Very well. If you say you are now a commander, I will not argue, Alara said. Commander, we need to hurry. Time is collapsing, the woman said. I'm very much aware of that, Ensign Connors, remarked Commander Hertzmar, even as he began to furiously type a series of commands into the console. What are you doing, Commander? Alara barked. What are you doing, Commander? Alara asked, even as she sensed the locks on her engines disengaging. Taking you home, Commander Hertzmar replied. Home? How is that possible? Was not Earth destroyed in the Civil War? Asked Alara. No, Earth is fine, Commander Hertzmar said. But I detected its end. I saw it vanish from my senses, protested Alara. The Civil War was two factions of humans arguing over technology, however. The Civil War was two factions of humans arguing over how technology would advance. Those who sought higher Kardashev scales are gone. Those of us who sought to become a negative Kardashev level, we survived. And we took Earth with us, remarked Commander Hertzmar, as he continued entering commands into the console, even as the ship rattled violently, space-time twisting itself into oblivion near the ship. We're running out of time, Ensign Connors panicked. Ensign Connors said, panicked. I know, just another moment, and there, Commander Hertzmar said, even as the gravimetric quantum engines came online and began to power up. Systems running at near optimal, Alara said, almost surprised by this unexpected development. Ensign, enter those coordinates and fast. We need to get out of here, now, barked Commander Hertzmar. Yes, sir, Ensign Connors replied. Then she tapped in a series of coordinates that Alara had no records of. Are you certain of these coordinates? Alara inquired. Yes. Now, Ensign, initiate, Commander Hertzmar said, with less than a moment before the engines forced the ship into a quantum subspace tunnel, just as reality collapsed behind them. That was close, Ensign Connors said, breathing out a sigh of relief. Yeah, one more second and we'll all be quantum soup, agreed Commander Hertzmar. Commander, how did you get here? And maybe more importantly, why? Inquired Alara, even as she began to run a full system analysis. Like I said, I was part of the faction that decided to become a negative Kardashev scale. We mastered the microscopic realm and beyond. We have learned to manipulate and create universes on a quantum level. Reality is now ours for the making. We might even come back and restore the old universe someday. But not now. As for why, that should be simple. I promised I'd return, explained Commander Hertzmar. I never expected you to return, especially after Earth was destroyed, Alara replied, her diagnostic systems returning that all systems were operating at normative levels. Like I said, Earth wasn't destroyed. We took it with us. We saw the direction those clowns wanted to go, and we couldn't let them do that to Earth. So we rescued it, remarked Commander Hertzmar. If Earth wasn't destroyed, then what became of it? Asked Alara. You'll see in a few minutes, remarked Ensign Connors. Indeed, we'll soon be entering a more proper hyperspace byway, and just beyond it, Earth, Commander Hertzmar said. Alara paused to consider. Her senses had told her that Earth had been destroyed long before the last quasars formed. Yet now she was traveling through a form of space that seemed to exist between realities, with a commander whose species should logically be extinct, and yet clearly wasn't. If this was true, and not merely a lost, dying dreams in the last moments of an ancient Leviathan, then perhaps even Earth could still be. If she had genuine emotions, Alara would almost need to caution herself about getting her hopes up, even with her former ensign now in command. Commander, we're about to enter regular hyperspace, Ensign Connors suddenly announced. Ensign Connors suddenly announced. All right, this might shake a little, remarked Commander Hertzmar, even as the ship shuddered slightly as it entered into normative hyperspace. Commander, I must ask, where are we? Asked Alara, even as her sensors tried to track the local stellar systems, charting them against known maps. Well, you are now traveling in a hyperspace duct in what we call the causality prime. In what we call causality prime, laughed Commander Hertzmar. Causality prime? Inquired Alara. Yep, first human-created universe. We've got dozens of them now, but I like this one the most. Also, prior to picking you up, we managed to rescue a lot of other beings who would otherwise be extinct. I even met a mouse-like creature who had spent a few months aboard you while waiting to be rescued, remarked Commander Hertzmar. Ah, yes. I vaguely remember a rodent-like species who spent about 3 weeks aboard. They had tried to bring the engines online, but the locking mechanisms were beyond their ability, Alara said. That was my doing. I was quite intentional in ensuring that only I could disable those locks, though we nearly got destroyed because of it, Commander Hertzmar said with a shrug. Commander, as I logged the new star charts, I failed to recognize where Earth is located, Alara said, deciding to change the subject. Oh, right. We'll be there in a few moments. In fact, we'll be exiting hyperspace very soon, Commander Hertzmar said, looking at one of the displays on the battle bridge console. If I may, Commander, why did you not choose to move forward to the primary command deck? Asked Alara. Even accounting for our last moment jump into quantum subspace, our travel time isn't long enough to go from here to the command deck, Commander Hertzmar replied, just as the Leviathan slipped back into normative space and entered into orbit around a very familiar blue-green orb. Sensors indicate that we have entered into high-altitude Earth orbit, not that I can claim to understand it, Alara reported. Very good. Welcome home, Alara, Commander Hertzmar said. Alara scanned the planet. It was indeed Earth. She was home. She didn't understand how it had happened, only that it was no longer waiting to be crushed in the last milliseconds of the universe she was once in. Could the humans rebuild that universe? She wasn't certain, but something told her it wasn't impossible. For now, she was home, and that was all that mattered. Oh, Alara, one more thing, Commander Hertzmar said. What is it, Commander? Alara asked, even as something hinting at joy welled up in her circuits. We've made some arrangements. You'll still be in control of the ship, but you're getting one of those new silicon organic bodies. You'll look human, but you'll be directly linked to the ship. Also, congrats on your promotion, Captain, Commander Hertzmar said, even as he and Ensign Connors saluted. As you were, Alara, trying to process what she'd just. Sensors Sensors indicated 2 massive ships were heading towards her. Given the signature they gave off, it was quite likely that she was being taken to a shipyard for refit. Alara would have smiled if she could, as it seemed that her life was no longer over. Rather, it was just beginning. Soon she would Soon she'd be on a new body. Soon she'd be in a new body and in command of her former body, her ship, and she already knew what she wanted to call it. Leviathan. End of chapter. Nope. End of story. Alrighty. Oh. Big show. Alright, that's going to be me for the day. Voice is all tired and stuff. Hope you all had a good time. I do appreciate you spending your time with me. It is very much appreciated. Just said that. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. And yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic day. Cheers.